Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Knights101, where we discuss the wonderful world of Saint Seiya. And today I'm going to talk about a Gold Knight, one of the first Gold Knights to be introduced in the series, and this being Leo Gold Knight Aiolia. Now, Aiolia appears very early in the original work. He is the second Gold Knight to appear in volume 1 of the manga, just a few pages after the Pope, even though we didn't know he was a Gold Knight at the time. He will only be revealed to be so a few volumes later in the series. He also appears very early in the Netflix Knights of the Zodiac series, and this time we do know he's a Gold Knight, because he's the one who kidnaps Seiya's sister Patricia, taking her away to the sanctuary. Aiolia has a very generous, direct, humble and simple personality. He's not much of a thinker. He's a very loyal, very direct, very faithful kind of character. He was the younger brother of the Sagittarius saint Aiolos, and Aiolos is the knight who gave up his life to flee with Athena and save her from the sanctuary. Now, because of this, because the sanctuary said that Aiolos had betrayed Athena and had tried to kidnap and kill her, Aiolia has been tortured by the idea of having to somehow correct the mistakes of his brother and make up for them. For this reason, at the beginning of the series, he is extremely loyal to the sanctuary and to the Pope in particular, and he immediately accepts the mission to be sent to kill Seiya and the other Bronze Knights. And this is despite Aiolia being sort of a childhood friend to Seiya, because in the original work he contributed at least to Seiya's training and had a very good relationship with Seiya's teacher Marin. This hasn't been mentioned in the Netflix series, and it looks like the two of them haven't met each other after Aiolia kidnapped Patricia in front of Seiya's eyes. But regardless of this, wanting to correct to fix in a way his family's name and to restore his brother's memory, Aiolia accepts to go against Seiya and kill him to recover the Sagittarius gold cloth. Eventually he meets with the real Athena, Saori of Siena. He discovers that she is Athena. Remember that in the original series, the knights don't know that Siena is Athena. They believe her to be an impostor, but after meeting with her, Aiolia can feel her cosmos, so he learns that she is the true incarnation of Athena, and he changes his allegiance and swears fealty to her. Now, from this moment onwards, Aiolia remains a very faithful, steadfast defensor and protector of Athena. He even tries to go against the sanctuary on his own, but this doesn't turn out to be a good idea, because he's eventually defeated and brainwashed by the Pope. And something like this has also recently happened in the second season of the Netflix Knights of the Zodiac series. Now, back to Aiolia's personality. As I said, he's a very humble, direct, honest, thoughtful, not particularly deep thinker, but always very honest, always very steadfast in this defense of Athena. He's someone who prefers action to words, and he doesn't like other knights who spend too much time pontificating or talking about things. He prefers to take the direct approach and sort the situation out with his fists. He despises treachery, and he doesn't like cruelty against weaker enemies. He's not one to make enemies suffer, and when possible he will try to spare them as long as they surrender, or at least as long as they accept to go away and stop fighting him. He's not one who kills out of pleasure or fun. In many ways, Aiolia is the gold version of Seiya. They share a lot of traits and are very similar characters with very similar personalities. And even their attacks are similar, because Aiolia's main fighting technique is the lightning plasma, which is basically a number of lightnings, not too different from Seiya's meteor fist, and he strikes his enemies with this hundreds of thousands of lightnings moving at light speed and usually kills them instantly. However, like any other knight, he can slow his attacks down if he wants to, or he can make them a little bit weaker if he wants the enemy to survive. And again, he's a very charitable character who will not kill someone unless necessary, or unless he's fighting some kind of absolute evil character who just doesn't deserve to live, in his opinion. Being so similar to Seiya, Aiolia has become the main character in a number of Saint Seiya spin-offs. He is the leading star in Saint Seiya Episode G and then later in Saint Seiya Soul of Gold, both of these being spin-offs almost entirely devoted to the Gold Saints. And Aiolia has been chosen as the main character not because he's the most popular of the Gold Saints, that would probably be Gemini Saga, but because he's very relatable and has a very easy personality with all the usual character traits, faults and weaknesses that make up a typical shonen main character. So he works very well as the main character. He has interesting relationships with most of the other Gold Saints. For example, he is quite hostile to the Cancer Saint Death Mask, because Death Mask is usually a far more evil and treacherous kind of knight. He doesn't like all the time that Aries Mu or Virgo Shaka spend talking or theorizing instead of acting, and he has been very critical of both of them at times. But despite all this, he does share some deep affection towards them both, and he will try his hardest to help them out in battle or to avenge them if they fall. He also has a very complicated relationship with the Capricorn Knight Shura, and this is because Shura was the one most responsible for killing his brother Aiolos back 13 years ago. Of course, he completely hates Gemini Saga because he was the mastermind behind his brother's death, but it looks like he has eventually learned to accept that Saga suffered from bipolar personality, and so he doesn't seem to be as hostile towards him in the spin-offs as he was in the original series. Being entirely centered around Aiolia, the Saint Seiya Episode G manga really chronicles his years spent growing up and accepting his duties as a knight. He starts completely hating the sanctuary that had caused the death of his brother, but eventually he learns to respect and even befriends most of the other Gold Knights until he becomes one of them, and in turn until he is accepted as one of them. However, this is all being created and expanded upon by Saint Seiya Episode G, and the original anime and manga didn't go much in depth about Aiolia's past, only explaining that he had been the subject of a lot of verbal abuse by other knights or even simple soldiers in the sanctuary because of his brother's betrayal. One character Aiolia seems to have a friendly rivalry with is the Scorpio Saint Milo, and this is probably the reason why in the Knights Netflix series we see a short fight between the two of them, which ends up with Milo defeating a tired and weakened Aiolia after the battle at the Fifth Temple. Now, this fight wasn't in the original series, but it's been an interesting addition, and I know that Scorpio fans have absolutely loved it, because who's stronger between Aiolia and Milo has been a long-standing question in the Saint Seiya fandom, so it looks like the Netflix series gave its answer at least. Aiolia doesn't fight many other battles in the original series, besides his couple of fights against Seiya. It's only in the Hades chapter that we see him facing a few more enemies, defeating a couple of specters, and then having a bigger fight against one of the three main Hades commander, Radamantis Wyvern. And against Radamantis, a weakened Aiolia is eventually defeated, but unlike Mu and Milo, he shows himself capable of getting up again and again, and is always the last one to give up. So this really summarizes his personality. Very determined, very resourceful, and very faithful to the point of risking his life if necessary for what he believes in. And this was Leo Aiolia for the Knights101 series. If you like this video, put a like, share it, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and above all, keep following the wonderful world of Seiya. I'll see you all next time. Take care!